classroom to make sure that you don't have somebody who's quote-unquote hogging the equipment, and so that you're getting an equitable system. And that's a building level decision, but most schools have something in place for that to make sure that that is not happening.
Okay. I just wanted to comment too, this is a topic I've heard a lot of feedback on from, the schools that have very few to the schools that have, many of the iPads. And I think we need to come up with a plan going forward, because I feel like we're going to keep finding ourselves in this situation. And you've got some principals who actually discourage the PTOs from purchasing iPads or any other technology, because they say, if I purchase all of these for you, or if we purchase all of these for the school, in a couple years, this is going to come up in the agenda at the school board meeting, and then they're going to go and they're going to buy all the iPads for the other schools that didn't purchase it, and then, we won't get any of that, and we'll lose that funding that we could have then used this money for something else. So I feel like we need to figure out a way that we're encouraging them to use the money for these things, because it's a great help to the district. But at the same time, there is the issue. We need to make sure that it's fair, that, your kids' access isn't contingent upon which school they go to. So I just think that this is something, maybe it would be helpful if we had a committee that actually worked with a representative from each PTO and came up with a plan of, where they want the money to go, and kind of agree across the board that, hey, it would be nice to purchase iPads, and if they're working together and doing it across the board, then we can kind of help to guide this in a way that we're making sure that's going on the whole entire time, because I feel like this is a debate that goes on within each school, and each school makes a different decision as to which, whether they're just going to buy them anyway or whether they're not. And I want to make sure that we're encouraging them to do that across the board, not just for iPads, but I know smart boards was another discussion. When my daughter started school, I remember the discussion at our PTO meeting, and the principal had told the school that they shouldn't purchase smart boards, because if they purchase a bunch of smart boards, the school district is going to end up evening it out, and that's money they could use elsewhere. So again, I just think that we need to come up with a plan going forward.
We agree with you. I mean, we're looking at that problem. We are analyzing it. We know that it will be multi-layered in terms of solutions, and I do agree with you that it should be a part of this at the building level. So we will continue to work on that and provide feedback when we get it back.
Let me make a comment.
Does anybody else have a question? I can switch to the other presentation then. No? Okay, thank you. So the second presentation that I was going to share with you tonight is just a recap of what experiences some of our teachers reported regarding their attendance to the Pennsylvania Educational Technology Expo and Conference. In total in attendance, I have listed how many and the distribution of our teachers and administrators who attended this year's convention. We had our elementary teacher, who happened to be Mr. Ehrman, who also was a presenter at P&C. He presented regarding flipped instruction and his use of iPads in classrooms to help facilitate flipped instruction. So we were very happy to have representation in terms of a presenter at this year's P&C conference. Additionally, we had 3 middle school teachers, a high school librarian, 5 high school teachers, our 2 district media and technology integrators, a high school supervisor, and 2 district administrators. What we did beforehand, kind of some pre-planning we did to make sure that we were getting to see as much of the 100 or 100 plus presentations that happened over the 3 days of that conference, was to create a spreadsheet, a shared spreadsheet, and we all put kind of in where we planned to go throughout the course of the week, so that we could see that we had people who were hitting a variety of topics. So we all didn't go to just Ken's presentation, although we all wanted to. Just didn't go to Ken's presentation, and we saw a variety of informational activities throughout the entire 3 days. Then, once we got all that information, we decided, you know what, we want more than just these, whatever that adds up to, 17 people, 15 people who attended to be able to know more about this information. So what I did is I asked each of the people who attended to give me some kind of feedback in terms of what were their big takeaways regarding the P&C conference. And from that information, I'm putting together our March Technology Spotlight, which I'll talk more about in just a second. And it's also from that information that I created this presentation for you. First of all, in terms of takeaways from the conference, I had 3 teachers who provided me with quotes, things that they felt were really kind of resonated with them in terms of where we are in technology and how to infuse technology into instruction. So the first one from George Koros. George Koros is a principal and educator coming from Canada, very, very innovative. He writes a very popular blog. He's also written a book about change within education and leadership and the use of technology as well. He was one of the keynote speakers throughout the course of the week, and 3 days, sorry, in the week, 3 days. And one of the things that he said is today, if you don't have a Twitter, you're considered to be illiterate. And while this may seem like poor product placement, that he's just kind of trying to market for Twitter, his point, the greater point here, this is where you have to kind of go beyond the soundbite, is this idea that in today's society, media literacy is vital. It is essential in terms of developing understanding, being able to discern information as we are constantly having information thrown at us. And that information comes from many different avenues. It doesn't only come from textbooks, it doesn't only come from mainstream news sources, but it also comes from social media as well. So he's really kind of hitting on that point that our definitions of literacy have changed over time, and schools need to change and adapt to those definitions as well. The teacher who shared this quote said she really kind of started to think about that and thought, you know, I really need to start getting involved in using some of these technologies so I can teach students how to discern this information and how to actively and productively engage in social media platforms. So she wasn't a Twitter user, and by the end of his presentation, she had herself signed into Twitter, and she started to follow other educational innovators and began to learn how you can use social media for professional learning, as students can use social media and exchanges for their own learning and growth as well. So she really felt that it was important for her to start to get engaged because she has a responsibility to share this knowledge and these skills with her students. The next soundbite came from Device-Led Planning Will Fail. The teacher who shared this pointed out that she often goes to conferences and hears about the greatest new app or the greatest new tool, and she instantly wants to try it in her class. And she realized that that's not the way technology instruction should be occurring, that she really needs to constantly be thinking of her learning objectives first. It sounds kind of fundamental and simple, but when you get kind of starstruck by some of these things, you sometimes forget that. And she's like, you always need to come back to those primary learning objectives and then figuring out if technology can help you meet those objectives more efficiently or effectively. So that resonated with the teacher who shared this. The last quote comes from a representative from Carbon-Lehigh County who did a presentation about infusing STEM curriculum throughout the interdisciplinary STEM curriculum. And what he was referring to is the fact that computer science is often separated from other content matter. The teacher who shared this shared that when he is in department meetings or in other meetings, even though he is not a reading teacher, he's always told, well, everyone is a reading teacher. Everyone should be instructing and reading. And he said, you know what? The same thing goes with technology. We all need to have a responsibility for teaching our students to use technology effectively and to engage in STEM-like activities as well. So he was really kind of thinking about this idea of creating an interdisciplinary model for STEM instruction for use of computers as well. We have some pedagogical takeaways as well. One teacher reported kind of looking at this idea of spiraling curriculum more, and she was thinking about it in terms of digital citizenship instruction, the need that everyone is making a systematic attempt to instruct students in terms of digital citizenship and their digital footprint and responsibility. Flipped instruction was something else that was stressed, not only in Ken's presentation, but other presentations throughout the 3 days. And teachers came back with a whole host of tools that they can use for asynchronous learning opportunities for students to gain information, gain content, develop skills as well outside of the classroom or at their own pace. And then as Ken indicated in his presentation, one of the great features of using technology, whether it's computer or an iPad, is the use of formative assessment. So many teachers came back reporting that they learned of many new formative assessment tools that they were unaware of, and were eager to start to plan to use within their daily instruction. Finally, some of the resources, some you saw in Ken's presentation as well, some of the resources that teachers came back really excited to explore are listed here. Quizzes, informative, and Flubaroo all can be used for that formative instruction. Cobble is something that does word associations, which can help with developing research questions. Tinker and Scratch are both STEM-based, computer programming-based applications. Scratch is completely free. Tinker is kind of free with a premium. They get you in with some free stuff and then want you to get you enticed and then want you to spend money. And then TouchCast, which is a fantastic iPad app used to develop videos, and I believe that's part of what was used in the presentation that the students created today. And finally, now that all that information has been culled, it's being used to put together our March Spotlight. Throughout the course of the year, we've been monthly or every other monthly, Chris and myself, have been putting together Pennridge Technology Spotlights to really make sure that all this information that we're gaining through our research, through what other teachers are doing in the classroom, through conferences that we're attending, so that making sure that that information is getting disseminated throughout the faculty K-12. So these spotlights are being emailed out, and the information that I presented today and that I gathered from the various teachers who went to P&C will be used for our March Spotlight. And I provide you all with the links to the previous spotlights so you can kind of take a look at what they're looking at, what they look like, and what we're sharing with our faculty. One thing you'll notice about the 3 different spotlights that I shared with you is that they're all on different platforms. One of the things that we've also tried to do is demonstrate some of the different tools that we're talking about by not using just one method of creating these spotlights, but using different tools to demonstrate their use for teachers. So those are just some highlights from P&C this last February. So thank you so much for January. Thank you so much for allowing us all to go.
On that note, I really have to thank Mr. Casper, because when we talked about P&C, originally there were maybe 4 of us going, and through Mr. Casper's leadership, he really did encourage me to invite more teachers to go. So thank you very much. Everyone who attended that conference really learned a lot and got more excited about the tools that they can use with students.
I just have one comment. As we promote the use of social media, we also want to make sure our students are being very careful about that. We all know that colleges, employers are now using social media to screen people. So as we promote the use of the social media, I think we need to also promote responsibilities that go with that.
Absolutely, and I didn't mean to imply that teacher was going to tell her students to all run out to get Twitter accounts. Well, my point was more that to teach people how to be responsible users, she needs to be a user herself. She had decided. I absolutely agree, and that's one of the huge goals that we have in terms of creating that digital citizenship curriculum that will spiral through 5th grade and then be revisited 6th through 12 as well. And one of the things that we all kind of have to deal with is this idea of kids have to have some sort of exposure in order to learn how to function within that world. And if we eliminate it all from them, will they really ever learn how to be responsible social media users? And that's something that we all struggle with as educators and parents as well, and something that we constantly need to recognize.
I have a question. Is the Technology Spotlight newsletter, is that on the district website?
There's been a struggle finding a spot that is accessible based on the structure. We're redesigning part of the curriculum website so that there'll be a better spot for them. So at this point, it's been shared internally. It has not been put on the website for public viewing.
We are under construction. We are working on that very topic. You'll see it says under construction because we need to do a much better job with that so that you'll be able to find it quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question, it's a comment. Now that you guys are, going out, finding all these great things, how do you share it when you come back here? Do you have, is that all through, I don't know, before I say anything, how do you spread the word out there?
Well, that's part of the goal of the technology spotlight, that we create this goal of monthly. Sometimes there have been a couple of months that have missed, to get that disseminated to the faculty K-12 by email. The principals get that as well, and we'll refer to those spotlights and the tools that are within spotlights during faculty meetings to kind of remind people that they exist and that they're out there, and the supervisors do the same thing. Additionally, within many of the elementary buildings, at the faculty meetings, teachers who have become masters at a particular tool are sharing them, and they're part of the agendas of those faculty meetings at the elementary schools. At the middle school level, it's been more on a team-wide basis where that sharing has occurred, and then at the high school level, it's at the department level within department meetings where that sharing would occur. As far as technology integrators, how we've been really spreading that word is through the use of the spotlight and through the development of the new and improved, which really Chris Brockman deserves all the credit of, the new and improved technology integration website that is full of tutorials and information for teachers and for students and for parents as well.
Thanks.
Sure.
Anybody else for Cara?
Thank you.
Okay, that was great. The next item up, Diane, are you going to lead us through this, or who's going to be? We're going to be discussing school board directors' email addresses.
Doesn't that sound like a great topic? Wow, I got your attention now. I have kids, I have Cara, I have Brady, and I get this. Cut the new kid a break up here, right? But thank you. So what I wanted to talk about a little bit here tonight was, one of the things when I was approved at the board meeting that we talked about was increasing board access, not only to our network, but also via email. And somebody had raised the question, well, can we have a Pennridge email account? Sure, why not? You guys are board members. So you're already halfway there. You have an account to get into SharePoint, so you have a username and password already. So I really only have to turn on an email account for you. It would use the same email username and password, and I can provide direction on how to do that. So I did go to Dr. Radigan, and I said, what is your thought on this? And she actually went to the solicitor as well, and they are both highly in favor of using a Pennridge.org account for official school business rather than your personal email accounts as you are doing now. That would separate your personal life from your work, your board work life. I also reached out to our neighbors and, wanted to see how other boards were handling email. And Quakertown uses, their school email account, as does Pennsbury, Centennial, Palisades, Bristol, Neshaminy, and Central Bucks. So they were some of the responses that I got, that yes, they do use, the board uses an email account within the school district. So I kind of wanted to just throw that out to you tonight as my recommendation, as well as the technology director, that we begin to communicate through, the official Pennridge.org email account rather than each of your Gmail account or your Yahoo account, or I don't know if anybody still have an AOL.com account, I'm not sure. So I wanted to throw that out to you to see if that was something that I could begin to pursue for you, to make sure that we all do have an email account and that you know how to access it. Even more importantly, we could create a board at Pennridge.org distribution list. So, it would just go through board and then forward on to all of you individually. And then that keeps everything, more secure, more confidential, and like I said, from a technology point of view, I really think that's the way to go. So that's what I wanted to throw out to you.
I would like to maybe just go around the table. I don't know if we're going to make it a requirement. You mentioned that, I knew that the solicitor had some involvement in it, and he was in favor of it, but I don't know if we can force people to do that, or if we, or I don't want to say force, but if we can require that. I'm in favor of doing it myself, and maybe if we just go around and get a feel for it. What do you think of that, Dr. Yarno?
Considering that my email accounts have been conflated in many, many ways, I am definitely in favor of doing this, right?
I meant just go around and just get everybody's take on it.
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
I'm good.
Are you done? You're good? Yeah, no, I'm good with that, because having all the different emails and things, one centralized place, sounds great. Thank you.
I had actually asked David Gerardo this at least a year ago, so yeah, I'm in favor of it. I'm still waiting.
I actually surveyed the local districts back in November, so yes, I am in favor of this.
Are you ahead of me? Are you ahead of me again?
Yeah, he probably could have just given
No,
those
you
notes,
said that you
right?
did that already, so I'm surprised they didn't say, hey, somebody asked me this already. I'm just joking.
I'm in favor of it, but I would also like to add, currently on the district board page, we only have that one email address that goes to all of us. When we set this all up, I think it's also important to be able to add our individual email addresses on there, because if someone has a technology committee question, they may want to reach out to Barry and not necessarily reach out to the entire board. Or, if they have a question that's specific to a specific board member, I think it would also be good for them to be able to reach out to any one of us specifically, because I think sometimes it's intimidating for people to go and send out an email that they know is going to 9 people. So sometimes it's a little less intimidating if they say, oh, I know Joan Cullen, she goes to my school, I'm going to send the email out to Joan, or something, So I just think that would be helpful.
Yes, please.
Let's take Ridge Road, West
I'm
Rock
fine with
Hill.
it, although I have a question. Right now, the board email, we set that up so people wouldn't have to type in 9 separate email addresses, and they could just do one, but it goes to Anita first, and then it gets sent out. So if somebody sends it on the weekend, we don't get it right away. So will this be set up that it will go immediately, or does it still have to go through another person's email address?
I can certainly set it up so that it goes to you directly, so when somebody emails board@pennridge.org, it hits everybody's email at the same time. So you guys can decide how you want to set it up, but that would be my recommendation, so that when somebody sends it, it goes to everyone.
Okay, yeah, I think that's a good idea. And my other question is there a limit? I know the school, if they follow a certain pattern, people can figure out anybody's email address. But it seems that there's only so many letters of the last name. Will that be true, that it's only 7 letters or something like that?
No, that used to be the case, but that is no longer the case. So it
Okay.
is the normal convention would be first initial last name.
Right. And
Unless somebody has, your first initial last name, then it goes to the first 2 initials last name. Yours would be M.B. Clemens, is what I think it would be. If we follow convention, but we can work with you.
Right, that was just because when you shorten the last name, then that gets confusing to people. So I do think it's better if it's first initial and last name, so then it follows the pattern.
That was more of a DOS thing back, it was more of a limitation. Yeah, really, but it was. That was more of a limitation at one point. Outlook doesn't have that limitation anymore.
Okay.
So we did live with that, so we don't have to live with that anymore.
Okay, thank you.
I know, I do. I depend on counting to 7 so that I can get it correct. But, and I'm in favor of this. I just have one question. How soon would it change to these new emails? Because I know, and I believe I'm correct on this, on the calendar, the district calendar that's handed out at the beginning of the year, I know that it gives our personal home information, I believe that there's emails listed there as well. So it would have, so now you're changing from what's listed on the calendar to something else. So in the case that somebody was trying to contact us individually, that old email may now be ineffective. How will we get this information out to let people know?
I mean, we can delay it a bit if, you know, if you feel that that would be better. I was planning on, you know, the sooner the better, but I'm certainly open to suggestions here when you would like to release a new email.
I just don't want it to come back at us at a later date saying that you're trying to avoid emails by changing your email.
Couldn't we set it, couldn't we, like, for those of us, because I think everyone here has set up a separate email address already, what we could do, and maybe if someone doesn't know how to do it, maybe someone could walk anyone who doesn't know how to do it through it, but you could just go into that email address and forward it, so set it up so that in that old email address that you have, that all of the email will automatically be forwarded, so that way you're only checking this email address, but anything anyone sends to an old one will automatically go to this new one, so that way you don't miss anything and you don't have to keep going in and checking both.
Yeah, my concern isn't about checking two. It's about, like I said, you know, we published information saying this is how you contact us, and now we're going to change it. So how do we get that information out there? Yes, to say, now we're changing it.
Can I just, I think that we could figure that out. I mean, that's thing, you guys are the ones that control that. So if you're talking about a web, like all the email addresses on the website, if that just gets flipped over, if that's how people are coming through, I mean, I think I see what you're saying. You don't want to have like, oh, we can't get in touch with the school board, it's the end of the world. So, and that's a good point, but if you can just set it up so it's all set to go, you change the web, change it on, however, in the back room, however you do it, you change it on the front page, you change where it's pointed. I don't really want to point, I use my own email, a big mistake, I use my own email address. So I'm not going to be pointing that at the new one, obviously. But, I mean, there's a way to work it out. I think it's a good point, but you guys are far enough along now that that should not be a big deal.
And that old calendar doesn't even have the new people on there anyway, so it's already outdated anyway.
So that needs a look in it. That's a whole other discussion for another time, maybe, that whole page. But
I know.
it seems like there's 9 people in favor of it, so I think we should go, and I think that you have that in the case, we should do it.
Okay, great, then I will start to create the email addresses and I'll put some directions together.
Don't kill anything until you let us all know.
No, I will, oh, no, I'm not
When?
going to kill anything. No.
Like, kill the old address, and then when you do, when the new one is ready, then we'll just move it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Is there anything else you want to talk about that, or that's just it? Is that it?
No, that's it.
Okay.
I'll start moving forward and I'll keep you guys posted with your old email, you know, so that you know when we're going to switch over to the new.
Okay. All right, well, that was the last item except item number 4, which is public comment. Mr. Linden.
Robert Linden, West Rock Hill Township. The guy that invented email died of old age. I think he was 70. I think he just recently died. So
Yeah, I did.
you ought to have email mastered by now. I figure, it shouldn't be an issue. iPads in elementary school. What a brilliant idea. I wonder if Apple's heard about that yet. Seems to me that it was JLR that recommended we get rid of all the Apple product and standardize on Microsoft. So now I sort of hear this switch coming. I hear this big requirement for money now to buy iPads. And money, I think, is the issue. I think we're always discussing money. And so, again, the idea of bring your own device, or maybe buy your own device, ought to be thought about as a way of saving money so that you can have more equipment. If there's some way that people can bring their own device or buy their own device for the school, you'll have more computers to go around per student. And that's what you're trying to achieve, and you've been trying to achieve that for 5 years now. The idea of tablets, I remember, was discussed. Remember Mr. Thompson had a meeting where we had the public and everybody involved with the school and on one-to-one computing, discussed all that. I remember the iPad was suggested at that point for elementary school. The teachers, some of the teachers wanted to use it back then. But there was a lot of pressure just to use laptops. And we couldn't support tablets and iPads because of security issues. If you recall, the state of California issued iPads to everybody in every public school. And subsequently, they pulled that out because somebody cracked it. Security wasn't there that they thought they had. I think it's great that the elementary students have iPads and tablets and such like that. And I think what you really have to work on is the way that we can afford to furnish all this equipment. That I think is the issue, and I think that you're starting to open your minds to other ideas and other uses. There's a lot of open source software. There's a lot of cheaper hardware out there. And if all your applications are browser-based, then all you need is a browser. It seems to me that that's the way the whole scenario is going, is that everything's in the cloud, and it's all browser-based, and so it's not dependent upon what type of equipment you have. It can be a tablet, a phone, or a laptop, or a desktop. I think that's the way the world wants to go, and that's what I think you should be looking at as a way to save money. That's the way I see it from my standpoint, and I think you're starting to bend that way. I had another comment. I thought that we were going to get BrightBytes surveys more often than once a year. We had one in June, now we're going to have one in May. I thought we would have a lot of interim ones so we could compare data and to see what kind of progress was being made over a shorter period of time.
The reason why we didn't do that this year, and that's not necessarily the intention across the board, was because we needed time to make an impact to see a difference on the survey. So because we needed the time this year to really analyze that, to do the work with it, we thought it was best to just do it at the end of the year this year, and then we'll regroup in June or the end of May and make a decision at that point if we need to do it 3 times a year. We didn't think we were really going to get the value of doing it that second time.
Technology is moving very rapidly, and I think we've lost a year. I think we should have had more information. A 1-year sample is too slow as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. London. Anybody else? Anybody from the press here? Okay. Any board members? Next meeting of technology is April 11th at 6:30. So thanks, and we're adjourned.